The skeletal remains of what had once been a magnificent African lion lay motionless under the scorching Botswana sun. His breathing was so shallow that veterinarian Dr. Kevin Richardson initially thought the animal was already dead. Every rib showed through the lion's dull, matted coat, and his powerful frame had been reduced to skin and bones after what appeared to be weeks of starvation. Dr. Richardson had been conducting anti-poaching patrols in the remote Kalahari region when his guide, Tobogamo, spotted the dying animal beside a dried-up watering hole. What they found defied explanation: a full-grown male lion, approximately 8 years old, lying alone in the middle of nowhere, too weak to lift his massive head. In 30 years of wildlife work, I've never seen a lion in this condition still clinging to life, Richardson later told reporters. The animal's eyes were sunken deep into his skull, and his once golden mane had become a dirty, tangled mess. Open sores covered his body, likely from lying motionless for days, and his breathing was labored and irregular. Richardson knelt beside the dying predator, expecting the lion to show some sign of aggression or fear. Instead, the animal did something that stopped the veterinarian cold. The lion slowly turned his head toward Richardson and made direct eye contact, not the threatening stare of a wild predator, but the pleading gaze of a creature who somehow understood that help had arrived. It was like he was asking me to save him, Richardson recalled. I've worked with hundreds of big cats, but I've never seen that level of awareness, that human-like plea for help in an animal's eyes. Moved by this story? Subscribe and join us in supporting wildlife conservation. The lion's condition was unequivocally critical. His gums, starkly white, were a telltale sign of severe dehydration, and despite the oppressive desert heat, his body temperature had plummeted to dangerously low levels. Dr. Richardson, with his extensive experience, estimated the majestic animal had endured at least 3 weeks without sustenance and several days without a single drop of water. Most alarmingly, the lion's hind legs appear to be paralyzed, a likely explanation for his inability to hunt or even reach vital water sources. Faced with this dire situation, Richardson made a profound decision, one that would irrevocably alter both their lives. Defying standard veterinary protocol, which would typically call for the euthanasia of such a suffering animal, he instead resolved to attempt an unprecedented field rescue of a dying wild lion in one of Africa's most isolated locations. Every fiber of my veterinary training told me this lion was beyond saving, Richardson candidly admitted. Yet, an inexplicable spark of will to live in the lion's eyes compelled him to believe the animal deserved a fighting chance. Working with urgency as the daylight began to fade, Richardson skillfully established in 4-line, initiating emergency fluid therapy. Throughout this intricate procedure, the lion remained remarkably still, as if possessing an uncanny understanding that the human attending to him was there to help. While Richardson administered pain medication, antibiotics, and electrolyte solutions, his guide, Malif, urgently radioed for a helicopter evacuation to the nearest wildlife facility, a daunting 200 miles away. As darkness enveloped the Kalahari, Richardson faced another difficult choice: to spend the entire night beside the dying lion, diligently monitoring his vital signs and continuing the crucial fluid therapy. The desert air grew frigid after sunset, prompting Richardson to cover the lion with emergency blankets from his vehicle and then strategically position himself as a windbreak, shielding the animal from the biting cold desert winds. Throughout that long, first night, the lion's gaze remained fixed on Richardson's face. Each time the veterinarian checked the 4-line or adjusted the blankets, the lion would respond with soft, almost grateful sounds. Not the aggressive vocalizations typical of a wild predator, but something akin to contented rumbling of a domestic cat. It was surreal, Richardson later recounted. Here I was, alone in the desert with a dying lion who should have been terrified of human contact, and instead he seemed to trust me completely. He somehow understood I was there to help him. The helicopter evacuation at dawn was fraught with peril, a desperate race against time, and the lion's rapidly deteriorating condition. Dr. Richardson meticulously administered a sedative to the massive animal, ensuring his critical 4 fluids remained flowing consistently throughout the harrowing flight to Mount Animal Hospital. Upon receiving Richardson's radio call, Dr. Sarah Tulligle, the facility's esteemed head veterinarian, expressed understandable skepticism. "Kevin, "You're talking about a full-grown male lion who's been starving for weeks," Dr. Tillhagel had argued, her voice laced with concern over the radio. She raised valid points about the lion's future, stating, "Even if we save him, he'll never be releasable back to the wild. His paralysis means he can't hunt or defend himself." However, when the helicopter finally touched down and Dr. Tillhagel witnessed the lion's fragile state firsthand, her deep-seated medical instincts swiftly superseded her initial practical reservations. The animal was undeniably on the brink of death, yet his vital signs had miraculously stabilized somewhat due to Richardson's tireless overnight intervention. What truly stunned the veterinary team was the lion's complete lack of aggression. Despite being surrounded by multiple humans in an unfamiliar and undoubtedly stressful environment, he exhibited no signs of hostility. His behavior was completely contrary to everything we know about wild lion psychology, Dr. Hagel later documented in her medical report. Bewildered by the animal's calm demeanor, he passively allowed them to transfer him to the surgical table, accepted an oxygen mask without resistance, and remained remarkably calm throughout their thorough examination. It was as if, against all odds, he comprehended that they were there to save his life. The subsequent diagnostic tests laid bare the full, grim extent of the lion's condition. He had suffered a severe spinal injury, likely the result of a fall or a brutal attack by another lion, which had left his hindquarters completely paralyzed. The weeks of being unable to hunt had consequently led to extreme malnutrition and a cascade of devastating complications affecting multiple organs. His chances of survival, heartbreakingly, were estimated at less than 10%. The surgery to address Tao's severe spinal injury was an arduous undertaking, lasting a grueling 8 hours. Throughout the entirety of the intricate procedure, Dr. Richardson remained steadfastly present in the operating room. His unwavering presence appeared to exert a profound calming effect on the lion, a remarkable feat even while Tao was under anesthesia. As the powerful predator gradually began to emerge in the anesthetic haze, his eyes, with an almost primal instinct, immediately sought out and found Richardson's face. The path to recovery, however, was destined to be both slow and uncertain. The lion, whom Richardson affectionately named Tao, derived from the Setswana word for lion, now required an astonishing level of round-the-clock care. Recognizing the immense commitment needed, Richardson took an extended leave from his regular duties, dedicating himself entirely to personally overseeing Tao's demanding rehabilitation. In an act of unparalleled dedication, the veterinarian even set up a cot directly within the recovery room, spending 3 consecutive weeks sleeping beside the lion. During this critical period, he meticulously monitored Tao's progress, adjusting treatments as needed, and, perhaps most importantly, provided a constant, comforting companionship that seemed to defy the very nature of a wild animal. What transpired during those weeks of intensive recovery profoundly astonished the entire medical staff. Tao began to exhibit behaviors that had never before been documented in wild lions. He would become visibly distressed and agitated whenever Richardson, even for the briefest of periods, left the recovery room. Upon Richardson's return, Tao would respond with soft, rumbling, chuffing sounds, a vocalization typically associated with affection in felines, and despite his weakened state, he would attempt to nuzzle Richardson's hand. It was like watching a bond form between family members. Nurse Jennifer Mormey, one of the attending staff, observed with a sense of wonder. Tao's responses were undeniable. He calmed at the sound of Kevin's voice, found solace in his touch, and seemed to draw comfort from his mere presence in ways that utterly defied conventional scientific explanation. As Tao gradually regained his strength, his unique and gentle personality began to emerge. Though undeniably a formidable wild predator, he displayed remarkable gentleness around Richardson and the rest of the medical staff. Furthermore, he demonstrated an incredible capacity to accept the uncomfortable physical therapy sessions designed to restore function to his paralyzed legs, seemingly understanding, with an almost human-like intelligence, that these arduous exercises were crucial for his healing process. The breakthrough came during the 4th week of recovery. Dr. Richardson was conducting a routine examination when Tao did something that left everyone speechless. The lion, who had been unable to move his hind legs since his rescue, suddenly lifted his tail and flexed his back paws. The spinal injury was healing, and sensation was returning to his lower body. Dr. Tillhagel called it medically inexplicable. The type of spinal damage Tao had suffered typically resulted in permanent paralysis. Yet somehow, through what she could only describe as an extraordinary will to live, combined with the intensive care and emotional support Richardson provided, Tao was defying medical expectations. Video footage of Tao's first attempts to stand went viral on social media, shared millions of times around the world. The images of Richardson supporting the lion as he took his first wobbly steps since his rescue moved viewers to tears, and donations began pouring in from around the globe to support Tao's continued rehabilitation. 6 months after his rescue, Tao had made a recovery that veterinary experts called medically impossible. The lion, who had been paralyzed and dying in the Kalahari Desert, was now walking, running, and displaying the strength and vitality of a healthy adult male. But what happened next would capture the world's attention in ways no one anticipated. Richardson had built a specialized enclosure at his research facility designed to accommodate Tao's unique needs as a formerly wild lion who could never be released back to nature. The plan was simple: provide Tao with a comfortable retirement where he could live out his days in safety, away from the dangers that had nearly killed him. Tao, however, had other ideas. On a warm October morning, as Richardson entered the enclosure for their daily interaction, Tao did something that left the veterinarian stunned. The lion approached him slowly, then gently took Richardson's wrist in his massive jaws, not biting, but holding it with the delicate precision of a mother lion carrying her cub. Tao then began leading Richardson toward the gate of the enclosure, his intention unmistakable. He wanted to leave, not to escape, but to go somewhere with Richardson. When they reached the gate, Tao released Richardson's wrist and sat down, looking directly into his eyes with an expression that seemed to say, "Trust me." Against all protocols and professional judgment, Richardson made a decision that would change wildlife rehabilitation forever. He opened the gate. What followed was captured on multiple cameras and broadcast live around the world. Tao walked calmly beside Richardson as they left the facility grounds, showing no interest in running away or exhibiting aggressive behavior. Instead, the lion seemed to be leading Richardson somewhere specific. They walked for nearly 2 miles through the African bush, with Tao occasionally looking back to ensure Richardson was following. News helicopters circled overhead as millions watched the unprecedented sight of a man walking freely beside a full-grown lion in the wild. Their destination became clear when they reached a small pride of 3 lionesses with cubs who had been struggling to survive in the drought-stricken region. Richardson recognized them as the same pride he had been monitoring during his anti-poaching patrols, the same area where he had found Tao dying months earlier. What happened next stunned wildlife experts around the world. Tao approached the lionesses and began exhibiting protective behavior, positioning himself between them and potential threats, while making soft vocalizations that seemed to be communicating Richardson's peaceful intentions. The lionesses, who should have been terrified of human presence, remained calm and allowed Richardson to approach. It became clear that Tao had brought Richardson there for a purpose. The pride was suffering from the same drought conditions that had nearly killed Tao. Their usual water sources had dried up, and the lionesses were struggling to find enough prey to feed their cubs. Richardson understood Tao wasn't just showing gratitude for being saved. He was asking Richardson to help save his extended family. Over the following weeks, Richardson established a water station and feeding program for pride, working with local conservation authorities to ensure their survival through the drought. Tao remained with Richardson throughout this process, serving as an intermediary between the human world and the lion pride. The footage of a wild lion bringing a human to help his pride became the most watched wildlife video in internet history. Dr. Jane Goodall called it the most extraordinary display of cross-species cooperation and communication ever documented. Richardson eventually had to return Tao to the facility for his safety, but their bond remained unbreakable. Tao lived for 7 more years, becoming an ambassador for lion conservation and helping raise millions of dollars for wildlife protection programs. When Tao finally passed away peacefully in 2019, Richardson was by his side, holding the same gentle giant who had once been dying alone in the desert. Tao's legacy lived on through the conservation programs the story had inspired, and a profound lesson he had taught the world about the emotional intelligence and capacity for gratitude that exists in all living creatures. Ito taught me that the line between human and animal consciousness is far thinner than we ever imagined. Richardson said at Tao's memorial service, "He didn't just survive. He chose to use his second chance at life to help others." That's a lesson any human will be proud to learn. We hope Tao's incredible journey has touched your heart and shown you the extraordinary bonds that can form between humans and animals. His story reminds us that every creature deserves compassion and a chance at life, and that conservation isn't just about protecting species, but about understanding and respecting the intricate web of life on our planet. If you were moved by Tao's courage and Dr. Richardson's dedication, please consider subscribing to our channel for more inspiring wildlife stories. And if you're able, a donation to reputable wildlife conservation organizations can help ensure that more animals like Tao get the second chance they deserve. Thank you for watching.